The attorney's voice on the phone was so calm it made me angry. "Mr. Callahan? This is Douglas Freeman from Freeman and Associates. I need to speak with you regarding your father's estate. There has been a development." A development? My father had been dead for 9 days. His funeral was 5 days ago. I had sat in the last pew like a stranger while my sister delivered a eulogy about what a great man he was, while my mother accepted condolences from doctors and surgeons who had worked with him for decades, while everyone pretended I did not exist. There was no development. There was nothing left for me. "I think there has been a mistake," I said. "I was at the reading of the will. My father did not leave me anything." "Mr. Callahan, there was a second will. A private document held in a safety deposit box with instructions that it not be opened until 1 week after his death. I need you to come to my office today. It is rather urgent." Scout shifted on my shoulder, his claws gripping my jacket the way they always did when he sensed my heartbeat quicken. He let out a low croak, not quite a caw, more like a question. I reached up and stroked his sleek black feathers, and he pressed his head against my fingers. "Scout, the crow who had saved my life. The only living creature who had not abandoned me when everyone else did. The bird who rode on my shoulder everywhere I went, through the streets of Portland, to the grocery store, to the park, through the wreckage of everything I used to be. I should have seen it coming. 3 years of signs, all pointing to this exact moment. That morning had started like every other morning for the past 3 years. I woke before dawn because my body had forgotten how to sleep past 4:30. The apartment was cold, the radiator rattling and useless, the single window letting in a draft that no amount of weather stripping could fix. I made instant coffee in a chipped mug and sat on the edge of my bed watching the gray Portland sky slowly lighten. Scout was already awake, perched on the back of my only chair, watching me with those intelligent black eyes that seemed to see everything. When I raised my mug in his direction, he hopped down to the floor, waddled over to my feet, and then climbed up my leg, up my torso, settling onto my left shoulder like he belonged there. He did belong there. He had belonged there for 2 years now. "Another day, buddy," I said, reaching up to scratch the feathers under his beak. "Think anything good will happen?" He croaked once and tilted his head, which I chose to interpret as optimism. Scout was always optimistic. It was one of the many things I loved about him. "My name is Reed Thomas Callahan, and at 37 years old, I had become everything my father said I would become. Nothing. Nothing except a man with a crow on his shoulder, walking through a city that had forgotten his name. 3 years ago, I was one of the most respected veterinary surgeons in the Pacific Northwest. I had my own practice in downtown Portland, a beautiful clinic with state-of-the-art equipment, and a staff who believed in what we were doing. We specialized in complex surgeries, the cases other vets turned away. Orthopedic reconstruction, tumor removal, the kind of work that required steady hands and steadier nerves. I had an apartment in the Pearl District with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the Willamette River. I had a car that cost more than my parents' first house. I had a reputation that brought clients from Seattle and San Francisco and sometimes farther, people who had heard about the vet in Portland who could save animals other vets had given up on. I had everything. And then Victor Ashworth happened. Victor was my partner at the clinic. We had started the practice together right out of veterinary school. 2 young men with big dreams and complementary skills. He was the businessman, the one who handled the finances and the marketing and the schmoozing of wealthy clients. I was the surgeon, the one who actually did the work. For 15 years, it worked. We built something real, something I was proud of. I thought Victor was my friend. I thought we were partners in the truest sense of the word. I was wrong. Victor had been embezzling from the practice for years. I learned later. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, siphoned off into accounts I never knew existed. When the money ran out, when the debts started piling up, he needed someone to blame. He needed a way out that did not involve prison. So he chose me. The patient was a German shepherd named Duke, beloved pet of Harrison Whitmore, one of the wealthiest men in Portland. Duke needed emergency surgery for a twisted stomach, a life-threatening condition that required immediate intervention. I performed the surgery myself, as I always did for high-profile cases. Everything went perfectly. Duke was recovering beautifully. And then he died. Overnight, with no warning, Duke's vitals crashed. By the time the night staff realized something was wrong, it was too late. The necropsy showed a lethal dose of potassium chloride in his system, a drug that stops the heart within minutes. Someone had murdered Duke. And Victor made sure all the evidence pointed at me. He had accessed my computer with my credentials and ordered the potassium chloride. He had forged my signature on the inventory logs. He had paid a night technician, a young woman who owed him money, to testify that she had seen me enter Duke's recovery room around midnight. Harrison Whitmore was devastated. Harrison Whitmore was furious. Harrison Whitmore was connected to every powerful person in Oregon, including the members of the Veterinary Licensing Board. I was suspended within a week. My license was revoked within 3 months. The official finding was gross negligence resulting in the death of a patient, which is a polite way of saying they thought I killed a dog for reasons no one could explain but everyone was happy to assume. Victor bought out my share of the practice for pennies on the dollar. He expressed public sympathy for his former partner's mental breakdown and promised the community that such a tragedy would never happen again at their clinic. I lost everything: my practice, my reputation, my apartment, my savings drained by legal fees fighting a battle I could not win. By the time the dust settled, I had nothing left but a studio apartment in a bad part of town and a job cleaning kennels at an animal shelter that did not care about my past as long as I showed up on time. My father's reaction was the worst of all. Wallace Thomas Callahan was a legend at Portland General Hospital, chief of surgery for 22 years before his retirement. A man who had trained 2 generations of surgeons, who had pioneered techniques that were now taught in medical schools around the world, who had built his entire identity around excellence and discipline and the Callahan name. When his son lost his veterinary license for killing a patient, his world collapsed almost as completely as mine did. I remember the day I told him. I drove to my parents' house in Lake Oswego, the same house where I had grown up, where I had dissected my first frog in the basement and dreamed of becoming a surgeon like my father. I sat in the living room where I had opened Christmas presents and celebrated graduations and believed that my family loved me no matter what. "You have brought shame on this family," my father said. He was standing by the window, his back to me, unable to even look at me. A Callahan does not fail. A Callahan does not get accused of negligence. A Callahan does not kill a patient. "Dad, I did not do it." Victor framed me. "I can prove it if you just listen." "Prove it." He turned around, and his eyes were ice. "You had your chance to prove it. The licensing board reviewed your case. They examined the evidence. They found you guilty. That is how the system works. Read. You do not get to claim innocence just because you do not like the verdict. The system failed me, Dad." Victor planted evidence. He paid a witness to lie. He has been stealing from the practice for years, and he needed someone to take the fall. "No." My father's voice was a scalpel, precise and cutting. "You failed the system. You failed me. You failed everyone who ever believed in you. You failed the Callahan name. Dad, please. I am your son. My son was a surgeon. My son saved lives. My son made me proud." He pointed at the door, his hand steady as it had been in thousands of operations. "That man is not my son. Get out of my house. Do not come back." I never went back. I could not admit to something I did not do. And he could not believe his son over the system he had devoted his life to upholding. My mother called a few times in the first months. Brief, pained conversations where she begged me to apologize to my father, to admit my mistakes, to come home and make things right. When I refused, when I maintained my innocence, the calls became less frequent. Then they stopped entirely. My sister Miranda never called at all. She had always been the golden child, the one who became an ophthalmologist and married a successful attorney and had 2 perfect children and lived the life our parents expected. My disgrace only confirmed what she had always believed, that she was better than me, that she deserved more, that I had always been the family disappointment. For 3 years I lived in exile. No family, no friends, no future. Just work and sleep and the slow erosion of everything I used to be. The apartment I ended up in was a studio in a rough part of northeast Portland. $700 a month for 300 square feet of water-stained ceiling and questionable wiring. The building was old, the hallways smelled like mildew, and my neighbors were people who asked no questions because they had their own problems. I found work at a no-kill animal shelter on the east side, cleaning kennels and feeding animals and doing the grunt work that nobody else wanted to do. $8 an hour, 40 hours a week, just enough to cover rent and food and nothing else. The manager knew about my past, everyone knew, but she hired me anyway because I was reliable and I never complained and the animals seemed to calm down when I was around. "You have a gift with them," she told me once. "Even the scared ones trust you." "Animals do not care about reputation," I said. "They just care about how you treat them." She looked at me for a long moment. "That is true of people too, you know. Some of them, anyway." I was not living. I was existing. Getting through one day so I could get through the next, with no idea why I bothered. Then I found Scout. It was a Sunday morning in March 2 years ago now. I was walking to work because my car had died and I could not afford to fix it. The rain had stopped but the streets were still wet, puddles reflecting the gray sky like broken mirrors. I took a shortcut through the parking lot behind a grocery store, stepping over broken glass and fast food wrappers, when I saw something move near the dumpster. A flutter of black. A sound like paper tearing. I stopped. Watched. There it was again. A black shape struggling against the concrete, trying to move but not quite managing. I should have kept walking. I had $32 in my bank account. I could barely take care of myself. The last thing I needed was another problem. But I did not keep walking. Something made me move toward that struggling shape instead of away from it. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe it was the need to help something, anything, when I could not help myself. He was a crow, fully grown, with feathers so black they seemed to absorb the light. His right wing was bent at an angle that made my stomach turn, clearly broken, probably from a car or a fall. He was trying to hop away from me, but the broken wing threw off his balance and he kept falling over. "Hey there," I said, crouching down slowly, making myself as small and non-threatening as possible. "Hey, buddy. It is okay. I am not going to hurt you." He cawed at me, loud and harsh, a warning. But he was too weak to fly, too injured to escape. He just sat there, chest heaving, watching me with those intelligent black eyes. I took off my jacket and approached him slowly, talking the whole time. "I know you are scared. I know this is strange. But I can help you. I used to be pretty good at this, actually. When I was close enough, I moved fast, wrapping the jacket around him before he could react. He struggled, caught again, tried to bite me through the fabric. But I held him firmly, carefully, supporting the broken wing. "Okay," I said, mostly to myself. "Okay, we are going to figure this out." The nearest wildlife rehabilitation center was across town. I walked the whole way, over an hour in the cold March morning, holding this wild creature against my chest, feeling his heart racing through the jacket, talking to him the whole time just so he would know he was not alone. "You are going to be fine," I told him over and over. "I know it does not feel like it right now, but you are going to be fine. I have got you. I am not going to let anything happen to you." I did not know if I was talking to him or to myself. The wildlife center was run by a woman named Dr. Chan, a small person with kind eyes who looked like she had not slept in days. She examined the crow while I stood in the corner, shivering without my jacket, watching her hands move with the same careful precision I used to have. "Broken wing," she said. "Clean break, which is good. But the bone has started to set wrong, which means I will need to re-break it and pin it properly. He is also dehydrated and underweight, probably been injured for at least a week. Can you fix him?" "I can try, but it is going to be expensive. We are a non-profit, but we still have costs. The surgery alone will be at least $150. With medication and follow-up care, you are looking at $200 or more." I had $32. I had just told myself I could barely take care of myself. "Do it," I said. "Sir, I need to be honest with you. If you cannot afford this, we can try to find another option. We could transfer him to a facility with more resources, or we could discuss humane alternatives." Humane alternatives means killing him. It means ending his suffering if there is no other way. There is another way. I will pay. Just fix him. She looked at me for a long moment, this unshaven man in work clothes who clearly had nothing. Then she nodded. I will need at least $100 up front. A deposit. I did not have $100. But I had a watch, a gift from my father when I graduated from veterinary school, the only valuable thing I still owned. I had been saving it, holding on to it as some kind of talisman, proof that I had once been someone worth believing in. I do not have cash, I said. But I have this. I took off the watch and handed it to her. She looked at it, turned it over, saw the inscription on the back. To read, who will heal the world one patient at a time. Love, Dad. This is worth a lot more than $200, she said quietly. I know. Consider the extra a donation. She looked at me with something that might have been understanding. What is your name? Reed. Reed Callahan. Well, Reed Callahan, I will take good care of him. Come back tomorrow. We should know more by then. I walked home without my jacket, without my watch, without anything except the strange lightness that comes from giving away something precious for something that matters. That night I could not sleep. I kept thinking about the crow, wondering if he was okay, wondering if he was scared, wondering if he knew that someone cared about him. At 6 a.m, I called the wildlife center. Dr. Chun answered herself. The surgery went well, she said. I was able to reset the bone and pin it properly. He is resting now. He is a fighter, this one. Can he fly again? Pause. I do not know yet. The wing will heal, but there may be permanent damage. He might never fly the way he used to. But he will live? He will live. Thanks to you. I went back that afternoon. The crow was in a recovery cage, his wing wrapped in a bright blue bandage, and 4-line providing fluids. He looked small and fragile, nothing like the fierce creature who had caught at me in the parking lot. But when he saw me, something changed. He tilted his head, studying me with those black eyes. And then he hopped toward the front of the cage and made a sound I had never heard a crow make before. Not a caw, but something softer, almost like a greeting. He remembers you, Dr. Chun said. Crows are incredibly intelligent. They recognize individual faces and they remember who helped them. I reached through the bars and touched his head, and he did not pull away. He leaned into my hand, closing his eyes, and something in me broke open, something that had been locked away for years. Hey, buddy, I whispered. I came back. I told you I would. He made that soft sound again, and I knew in that moment that we belonged to each other, that whatever happened next, we would face it together. I named him Scout, because he had found me as much as I had found him, because we were both scouting for a new way to live. The next few weeks were a blur of visits and checkups and slowly learning what it meant to care for a crow. Dr. Chun taught me everything she knew, how to handle him safely, what to feed him, how to exercise his healing wing, how to read his moods from the sounds he made and the way he held his body. He is bonding to you, she said, about a month after the surgery. Crows do that sometimes, especially when they are rescued young or when they cannot return to the wild. He sees you as his flock now. What does that mean? It means he is yours, for better or worse. She was right. Scout's wing healed, but not completely. He could fly short distances, maybe 20 or 30 feet, but he would never soar the way wild crows do. He would never migrate, never join a murder, never live the life he was born to live. But he did not seem to mind, because he had found something else. He had found me. Scout started riding on my shoulder about 6 weeks after I brought him home. I had set up a perch for him in my apartment, a branch mounted to the wall near the window where he could watch the world outside. But whenever I was home, he wanted to be near me. He would fly down from his perch and land on my shoulder, gripping my jacket with his claws, pressing against my neck. You are going to have to stay home today, I told him, the first time I went to work after he was fully healed. I cannot bring a crow to the shelter. He caught at me, loud and indignant, and flew to my shoulder before I could stop him. When I tried to put him back on his perch, he flew right back. We did this 4 times before I gave up. Fine, I said, but if I get fired, it is your fault. I did not get fired. The manager at the shelter took one look at Scout on my shoulder and laughed. "Well," she said, "I have seen everything now." After that, Scout came everywhere with me. To work, where he would sit on my shoulder while I cleaned kennels and fed animals. To the grocery store, where he would watch the other shoppers with his head tilted like he was judging them. To the park, where he would hop down to explore and then fly back to my shoulder when he was ready to go. People stopped and stared. Of course they did. A man with a crow on his shoulder is not something you see every day. But the stares were different from the ones I had gotten used to. These were curious, amused, interested. People wanted to talk to me about Scout. They wanted to know his name, his story, how I had trained him. I did not train him, I would say. He trained me. Those conversations were the first real human interactions I had experienced in almost 2 years. People who would have walked past me without a glance stopped to ask about the crow on my shoulder. They looked at me like I was interesting, not pathetic. Like I was someone worth knowing. Scout gave me that. He gave me a way back into the world. There were moments in those early months that I hold on to still. Small victories that felt like miracles. The first time Scout caught a peanut I threw to him in midair. His reflexes perfect despite the damaged wing. He looked so proud of himself that I laughed out loud. The first real laugh I had laughed in years. The first time he said my name. Crows can mimic sounds, and Scout had been listening to me talk to him for months. One morning, I woke up to hear him croaking something that sounded almost like, "Reed." I sat up in bed and stared at him, and he did it again. "Reed, Reed, did you just say my name?" "Reed," he said, and tilted his head like he was pleased with himself. The first time I looked in the mirror and did not hate what I saw. It was about 4 months after I found Scout. I was getting ready for work, Scout on my shoulder as always, and I caught our reflection in the bathroom mirror. A tired man in cheap clothes with a crow perched on his shoulder like something out of a fairy tale. We look okay, I thought. We look like we might be okay. Scout taught me things I had forgotten. That routine mattered. That small joys were still joys. That being needed by another living creature was enough reason to keep going, even when nothing else felt like enough. He also attracted attention everywhere we went. A man with a crow on his shoulder walking through Portland was not something people forgot. They took photos. They posted them on social media. They told their friends about the crow guy they had seen near the waterfront. "You are like a local celebrity," the manager at the shelter told me one day. "People come in asking about the guy with the crow. I hope that is not a problem." "Are you kidding? It is great publicity. Keep bringing him." I started to build something that felt almost like a life. I made acquaintances at the shelter, at the coffee shop, at the park where I walked Scout every evening. Not friends, not exactly, but people who knew my name, who waved when they saw me, who treated me like a person instead of a failure. Scout was always there. On my shoulder when I walked to work. On his perch when I watched television. On my chest when I tried to read, which was difficult because he kept trying to eat the pages. He had forgiven me for being a failure. He loved me without conditions. And that love, as strange as it was, saved me. I did not reach out to my family. I did not know how, and I was not sure I wanted to. The wound was still too fresh. My father had chosen his precious Callahan reputation over his son. My mother had chosen my father over me. My sister had chosen to believe the worst without hesitation. But sometimes, late at night, with Scout sleeping on his perch nearby, I would wonder if they ever thought about me. If my father ever regretted his words. If my mother ever cried when she saw my empty chair at holidays. If Miranda ever felt guilty for abandoning her brother. I told myself I did not care. But you never stop wanting your parents to love you, no matter how badly they hurt you. I found out my father was sick through an article in the Oregonian. It was 14 months before he died. I was at the library using their free computers to search for jobs, when I saw the headline. Renowned surgeon Dr. Wallace Callahan diagnosed with ALS. I read the article 3 times. Scout perched on my shoulder, as if he knew I needed the comfort. Then I closed the browser and sat there for a long time. ALS. Lou Gehrig's disease. A slow death sentence, the body shutting down piece by piece while the mind remains trapped inside. For a surgeon, a man whose hands had been his identity, it was the cruelest possible ending. I thought about reaching out. I wrote emails I never sent. I drove to Lake Oswego twice and sat in my car across the street from my parents' house, Scout on my shoulder, unable to make myself walk to the door. I even wrote a letter that I addressed and stamped and carried in my pocket for a week before throwing it away. In the end, I did nothing. Fear, pride, the certainty that he would reject me again, and I was not strong enough to survive that rejection twice. So I watched from a distance. I read updates in the newspaper. I learned about his decline through articles that praised his career while documenting his deterioration. I became a ghost, haunting a life I was no longer part of. What I did not know, what I would not know until much later, was that my father was watching too. 2 months after his diagnosis, my father hired a private investigator named Samuel Wright. I know this because Samuel Wright later became a witness to my father's second will, and he told me everything. "Your father wanted to find you," Samuel told me, after everything was over. "He had lost track of you after you moved to the northeast side. He did not have your address, your phone number, anything. So he hired me. Why did he not just call the shelter? Everyone knew I worked there. He was afraid. He said he had done something unforgivable, and he did not know if you would talk to him. So he asked me to find you first, to watch you, to report back on how you were doing. And you did. For 14 months. Every week I sent him a report. Photos, updates, details about your life. He watched me for 14 months and never reached out?" Samuel's face was sad. He was working up to it. He kept saying he was not ready, that he needed more time. And then the disease took his voice, and then his hands, and then it was too late. The photos, I think about them often. Samuel sent my father photos of me walking to work with Scout on my shoulder. Photos of me in the park, sitting on a bench, Scout hopping around my feet looking for dropped peanuts. Photos of me at the shelter, cleaning kennels, Scout perched on a nearby fence waiting for me to finish. My father looked at those photos every day. He printed them out, Samuel told me, and kept them in a folder by his hospital bed. Near the end, when he could barely move, he would have my mother hold them up so he could see them. "That photo changed everything," Samuel told me. "There was one in particular. You were in the park and a little girl had asked to pet Scout. You were kneeling down so she could reach him, and Scout was being so gentle with her, and you were smiling. Really smiling, not just pretending. I remember that day. Your father cried when he saw that photo. I was there, delivering the weekly report. He just sat in his chair and cried. He said, 'That is my son. That is who he really is. I should have known. I should have always known.' 6 months before he died, my father asked Samuel to do something unusual. He wanted me to drive him to Portland," Samuel said. He was already using a wheelchair by then, could barely speak. But he insisted. He said he needed to see you in person, even if you did not see him. What happened? I drove him to that park where you walk Scout every evening. We parked across the street, in a spot where he could see the bench you always sit on. And we waited. I never saw you. That was the point. He did not want you to see him. He just wanted to see you. I think about that often. My father, dying, unable to speak, sitting in a car across from the park, watching me sit on a bench with a crow on my shoulder. He watched you for almost an hour, Samuel said. You talked to Scout the whole time, pointed at birds, at squirrels, at people walking by. Scout would caw back at you and you would laugh. Your father watched every second of it. Why did he not just come over? Why did he not let me see him? He said he was not worthy. He said he had failed you, and he did not deserve your forgiveness. He said the only thing he could do now was fix what he had broken, even if you never knew he was the one who fixed it. Fix what he had broken? Your name, your license, your reputation. He spent the last year of his life trying to undo what was done to you. I did not know any of this. I just lived my life, walked to work, sat in the park with Scout, existed in my small apartment without any idea that my father was watching. Without any idea that he was working, even as his body failed him, to give me back everything I had lost. My father died on a Wednesday. I found out through Miranda's Facebook post. Our beloved father, Dr. Wallace Thomas Callahan, passed away peacefully this morning surrounded by family. He was a pioneer, a healer, and an inspiration to all who knew him. He will be deeply missed. Surrounded by family, everyone except me. The funeral was held 3 days later, at the largest church in Lake Oswego. The crowd overflowed into the parking lot. Surgeons came from across the country to pay respects. The governor sent a representative. It was exactly the kind of funeral my father would have wanted. Big, important, a final testament to the Callahan name. I almost did not go. What was the point? I had been erased from the family 3 years ago. My presence would only make everyone uncomfortable. But Scout looked at me that morning with his intelligent black eyes, and I swear he was telling me to go, to say goodbye, to close this chapter. I brought him with me. I could not imagine going through anything hard without Scout on my shoulder. He was my armor, my comfort, my proof that I was still capable of being loved. We sat in the back row. I wore the only suit I still owned, charcoal gray, too big now because I had lost weight. Scout perched on my shoulder, perfectly still, as if he understood the gravity of the occasion. People stared. Of course they did. A man with a crow at a funeral. But I did not care. I was there to say goodbye to my father, not to impress anyone. The service was beautiful in the way funerals for important people always are. Colleagues spoke about his surgical innovations. Friends spoke about his mentorship. Miranda spoke about his dedication to family, his high standards, his unwavering commitment to excellence. She did not mention me. Not once. I watched my mother in the front row, frail and small in her black dress, supported by Miranda on one side and Miranda's husband on the other. I wanted to go to her, to hold her hand, to tell her I was sorry. But she never turned around. She never knew I was there. After the service, as people filed out to their cars, Miranda spotted me. She marched over, her heels clicking on the stone floor, her face twisted with fury. "You brought a crow?" she hissed. "You brought a crow to our father's funeral? What is wrong with you? His name is Scout. I do not care what its name is. This is a sacred ceremony. Read. This is our father's final goodbye. And you show up looking like some kind of homeless person with a bird on your shoulder. I came to say goodbye, the same as you. You do not deserve to say goodbye. You broke his heart. You destroyed his reputation. Do you know how many people asked him about you at the end? How many colleagues wanted to know what happened to his son? He had to lie, Reed. He had to tell people you were traveling, that you were busy, that you could not make it home. Because the truth was too embarrassing. Scout cawed once, sharp and loud. Miranda flinched. "Keep that thing away from me," she said. "And stay away from Mom. She does not need to see you. None of us do." She walked away. I stood there in the church parking lot, alone except for Scout, and I felt the last thread connecting me to my family finally snap. I drove home. I did not go to the reception. I did not try to talk to my mother. I just went back to my apartment, sat on my bed with Scout on my shoulder, and stared at the wall until the sun went down. The attorney's call came 9 days later. Douglas Freeman's office was in a nice building downtown, the kind of place where people in expensive suits discussed important matters. I felt out of place the moment I walked in, with my thrift store clothes and my crow on my shoulder. The receptionist stared at Scout but said nothing. Douglas Freeman, a silver-haired man in his 60s, smiled when he saw us. "Mr. Callahan, thank you for coming. And you must be Scout. You know about Scout? Your father spoke of him often. He said Scout was the best thing that ever happened to you." He gestured toward his office. "Please come in. We have much to discuss." His office was lined with law books and family photos. He sat behind his desk and folded his hands, looking at me with an expression I could not read. "Mr. Callahan, your father came to me about a year ago. He was already quite ill by then, but his mind was sharp. He wanted to create a separate estate document, one that his other family, would not know about. I was at the reading of the will. I was not mentioned. That was the public will, yes. The house, the savings, the investments all went to your mother and sister. That is what everyone expected, and that is what everyone received. Then why am I here? Douglas opened a drawer and withdrew a thick manila envelope. Because there was a second will. Private. Held in a safety deposit box with instructions that it not be opened until 1 week after his death. He slid the envelope across the desk. I stared at it. Your father left you something, Mr. Callahan. Something significant. I opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a stack of documents, bank statements, legal papers, and on top, a letter in my father's handwriting. The handwriting was shaky, uneven, clearly written when his hands had already started to fail him. Dear Reed, it began. If you are reading this, then I am gone, and you are learning things I should have told you myself. I was a coward. I spent my whole life saving other people, but I could not save my own son from myself. Let me start with the truth. I know you did not do what they accused you of. I have known for over a year now. After you lost your license, I could not accept it. Not because I believed you were innocent, but because I needed to believe the system worked. My whole life I trusted systems. I trusted protocols and procedures and evidence. If the system said you were guilty, then you must be guilty. Because if the system could fail my own son, then nothing I believed in was real. So I chose the system over you. I chose to believe the worst about my own child because the alternative was too painful to face. I was wrong, Reed. I was so wrong. About 14 months ago, I started investigating. I hired people to dig into Victor Ashworth, into the night of Duke's death, into everything. What they found made me sick. The embezzlement, the forged records, the bribe technician. Victor did not just frame you. He destroyed you deliberately and systematically because he needed someone to blame for his crimes. I have compiled all the evidence. It is in this envelope. I have also sent copies to the Veterinary Licensing Board, to law enforcement, and to every news organization in Oregon. By the time you read this, Victor Ashworth will be facing criminal charges, and the process to restore your license will be underway. But that is not why I am writing this letter. I am writing because of the crow. My investigator sent me a photo about a year ago. You were walking through Portland, and there was a black crow on your shoulder. He told me the story, how you found Scout in a parking lot with a broken wing, how you gave away your watch to save him, how you carried him everywhere because he could not fly well enough to follow on his own. I looked at that photo for a long time. My son, who I had called a disgrace, walking through the rain with a broken bird on his shoulder. My son, who had lost everything, giving away his last valuable possession to save something even more broken than himself. That photo showed me who you really are. Not a man who kills animals through negligence. A man who saves them. A man who gives when he has nothing left to give. A man I should have believed from the beginning. The watch you gave away, the one I gave you when you graduated, I wish I could give it back to you. I cannot. But I can give you something else. In the safety deposit box, you will find investment accounts worth approximately $1.8 million. This money was set aside over the last decade, separate from the estate your mother and sister know about. It is yours. All of it. But the money is not the point. Reed, I need you to know that I saw you. At the end, even though I could not speak or write or reach out, I saw you. I had Samuel drive me to Portland about 6 months ago. We parked across from that park where you walk Scout every evening. I watched you sit on that bench and talk to your crow for almost an hour. You pointed at things, you laughed, you looked more at peace than I had seen you in years. I wanted to get out of the car. I wanted to walk over and sit beside you and tell you I was sorry. But I could not move without help by then, and I was afraid. Afraid you would reject me the way I rejected you. Afraid I had waited too long. So I just watched. And I understood, finally, what I should have understood all along. My son is a healer. My son saves broken things. My son carries a crow on his shoulder because that crow cannot fly, and my son would never abandon something that needed him. I should have known. I raised you. I saw you bring home every injured animal in the neighborhood when you were a boy. I saw you choose veterinary medicine because you wanted to help creatures who could not help themselves. I saw who you were, and I forgot it because I was too proud and too stubborn to admit the system I believed in could be wrong. Take care of Scout, Reed. He is proof of who you really are. And he is a better judge of character than I ever was. I love you. I always loved you, even when I was too blind to show it. I am proud of you. I am sorry. Your father, Dad. P.S. I spoke to Dr. Chun at the Wildlife Center. She told me about the watch, about how you gave it up without hesitation to save a bird you had just met. She said it was the most selfless thing she had ever seen. I cried for an hour after that phone call. My son, giving away the last gift I ever gave him to save a crow. That is the man I raised. That is the man I should have believed. PPS Scout is a good name. Crows are among the most intelligent birds in the world. They remember faces, they hold grudges, and they never forget kindness. I hope he remembers that I tried, at the end, to be worthy of your forgiveness. Even if I never was. I do not know how long I sat in Douglas Freeman's office, reading that letter over and over, tears streaming down my face. Scout pressed against my neck, making soft sounds, as if he knew exactly what I was feeling. There is more, Douglas said gently. Your father also compiled evidence to clear your name. Victor Ashworth was arrested last week. The licensing board has already begun proceedings to restore your veterinary license. He did all that? He spent the last 14 months of his life making sure you would get justice. He said it was the only thing that mattered anymore. I looked at the letter again, at my father's shaky handwriting, at the words I had waited 3 years to hear. He was watching me. This whole time he was watching me. Every week, Samuel sent him reports. Every week, he looked at photos of you with that crow on your shoulder. He kept them by his bed. Near the end, when he could not move at all, he would just lie there and look at them. He said they gave him peace. Scout cawed softly. I reached up and stroked his feathers, and he pressed his head against my hand. He came to the park, I said. 6 months ago. He was there, and I never knew. He wanted to come to you. He tried several times, but he could never make himself do it. He was afraid you would hate him. He said he would rather watch you from a distance than risk being rejected by his own son. I would not have rejected him. If he had just come over, if he had just said something. He knew that, I think. At least he hoped it. But fear is not rational, Mr. Callahan. And your father, for all his brilliance, was deeply afraid of losing you forever. I looked at the letter one more time, at the PS about the watch, about Dr. Chun, about who I really am. He saw me give away the watch. He knew about it within a week. Dr. Chun told Samuel when he was asking questions about you. Your father wept when he heard. He said it proved everything he needed to know. I thought about that moment, standing in the Wildlife Center, handing over the last valuable thing I owned, the last gift from my father. I had done it without thinking, without hesitation, because Scout's life mattered more than any watch. And my father, watching from the shadows, had understood what that meant. The crow, Douglas said, changed everything for him. He told me once that Scout was God's way of showing him who you really are. I looked at Scout, perched on my shoulder, watching me with those intelligent black eyes. This broken bird who could not fly. This creature I had saved on a whim, without any plan, without any expectation. He had saved me right back. And he had saved my relationship with my father, even though neither of us knew it at the time. It has been 6 months since my father died. I have a new apartment now, a real one, with 2 bedrooms and a balcony where Scout likes to sit in the morning sun. I could afford something fancier, but I do not need fancy. I need space for Scout to hop around, room for his perches, windows where he can watch the world go by. My veterinary license was restored 4 months ago. The board issued a formal apology. Victor Ashworth is awaiting trial on charges of fraud, evidence tampering, and animal cruelty. His license has been permanently revoked. The clinic we built together has been shut down. I am not going back to that kind of practice. That world, that life, that version of myself is gone. Instead, I have opened a small wildlife rehabilitation center in southeast Portland. We specialize in birds, mostly crows and ravens and other corvids. We save the ones who can be saved and give dignity to the ones who cannot. Scout is our mascot, our ambassador, our proof that broken things can still be beautiful. He rides on my shoulder when I give tours to school groups. He sits on my desk when I do paperwork. He is famous now in a small way. The local news did a story about us. The crow guy, they called me. I do not mind. My mother visits sometimes. The first time was hard. She came to Portland on a cold October afternoon, small and fragile in a way I had never seen before. When she saw Scout on my shoulder, she started to cry. He sent me photos, she said. Your father. Every week, he would show me photos of you with this crow. He would not tell me where you were, but he wanted me to see that you were okay. Why did you not try to find me yourself? Because I was a coward. Because I was afraid of what you would say. Because I chose your father over you, and I knew I did not deserve your forgiveness. You could have called. You could have written. I know. I should have. I live with that every day. She reached out, tentatively, and touched Scout's wing. He is beautiful. He is everything to me. I can see that. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. Can you forgive me, Reed? Can you forgive us? I thought about my father, watching from a parked car, too afraid to get out. I thought about all the time we lost, all the words we never said. I thought about what Scout had taught me, that forgiveness is not about deserving. It is about choosing to let go of the pain. I am working on it, I said, but I think so. Eventually. Scout cawed softly and hopped from my shoulder to hers. She gasped, startled, then laughed as he pressed his head against her cheek. He likes you, I said. Crows know, she said. They know who to trust. We sat together for hours that day. We talked about my father, about his last months, about the photo folder he kept by his bed. She told me about his final days, how he would lie there looking at pictures of me with Scout, how he would try to say my name even when he could no longer speak. He loved you, she said. He loved you so much that he spent his dying months trying to make things right. He said you were the best thing he ever did, even though he had failed you so badly. I wish he had told me himself. He wanted to. He tried so many times. But he was afraid. He was always afraid, Reed. Of failure, of imperfection, of not living up to the Callahan name. And that fear kept him from the thing he wanted most. His son. Miranda has not called. I do not expect her to. Some wounds are too deep to heal, some bridges too burned to rebuild. I have made my peace with that. I have Scout, and I have my mother, and I have work that matters. That is enough. I go to my father's grave sometimes. Not often, but when I need to feel close to him. Scout comes with me, perched on my shoulder, watching me talk to a headstone. I got your letter, Dad, I say. I read it every night for a month. I have it memorized now. Scout caws softly, as if adding his own message. I forgive you. I need you to know that. Wherever you are, I forgive you. The wind moves through the trees. The sun shifts behind a cloud. And I swear, sometimes I can feel him watching. Not from a parked car across the street, but from somewhere closer. Somewhere peaceful. Thank you for Scout, I say. Thank you for seeing who I really am. Scout presses against my neck, warm and solid and alive. And somewhere I believe my father is finally at peace. Thank you for walking this journey with me. Before you go, I have left 2 more stories here on your screen. Both from men who discovered that family is not always who you are born to. It is who stands by you when the truth comes out. Click on whichever one calls to you. And if you want to join our community of people who understand what it is like to be the outsider looking in, that notification bell is your invitation. Until tomorrow, remember, your story matters, even if they tried to erase it.